Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another iteration of the Simulationist podcast. This is the 44th. Today is July the 7th.
7/7 of 2013.
2013, yes. And I am Josh Trelevin. With me as always on the other side of the little small table that we have this week.
On the other side of the microphone is Ryan Kirkby.
Right, we're working with one microphone. We're always evolving though, so we're planning on moving up to two, so maybe, I don't know if that will improve your sound quality. Hopefully if you've been listening this long, you are okay with how we've done this so far, but we're always trying to do things a little bit different.
There's always room for improvement.
Okay, and of course, yes, send us your feedback. But we should get on to, stuff that we're going to talk about.
Yes, well, let's start with what you've been doing this week, Josh.
Oh, okay, yeah, we'll start with me. Oh, well, of course, always playing Minecraft, more Minecraft. I've been mapping out my world, one little map at a time. Very tedious, but apparently it's what I enjoy doing. I discovered horses.
Oh, I was going to ask that. So you've actually discovered horses. What kind did you discover? Speckled horses, full brown?
I found them all. The first horses I found were black horses, and I found two of them.
The black stallions.
Yeah, it was very cool. But then, like, you have to sit on the horses for a little while, and it's pretty easy. Like, you break the horse, and I'm putting that in scare quotes, quote unquote, break the horse.
That is, of course, a technical term. You don't, like, shatter the horse's spine. It's a term meant to break the wild nature of the horse to help domesticate it.
Yeah, that's right. And basically, in Minecraft, they make everything, simplified because it's, the world is blocks and you do things very simply. So
you get apples out of oak trees.
Yeah. So in order to break a horse, you just have to sit on it for a while. That's basically it. It kicks you off and you just get back on, and I don't know, it takes about 2 minutes, maybe less even, of just sitting on the horse. And
does it try and buck you off?
It doesn't, like, fling you off. It just, like, knocks, you don't take any damage or anything like that, which I was thinking a little while, like, maybe that should have been a mechanic, like, it should hurt you, but then, like, maybe that's kind of unnecessary, so...
Wow. It does ruin my potential prospects at recreating a rodeo.
True, yeah. You'd have to actually take fall damage, so there would have to be some hills in your rodeo, I think, or something of that.
But a traditional rodeo, it takes place on a flat ground with a nice fence. You open up the one gate and the horse goes off.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose if you dismount a horse in mid-jump, you would probably dismount in the air and you could take fall damage because horses can jump high enough that the character falling off a horse would take fall damage. But that in itself, like, you can't do that by accident. You'd have to actually... purposefully
do that. And that's not really what a rodeo's about.
Yeah, you need skill to actually hurt yourself in Minecraft. So, I mean, it's a little bit awkward. There's some bugs. It's a little bit... It doesn't feel quite right. But I'm thinking I might get used to it. I might just forget,
I'm sure someone out there's already modded in exactly what we've talked about.
Could be, yeah.
And maybe a nice little extra bit where cows become a hostile mob when you hurt them. So that way you can actually do bull dodging sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I think that is probably somewhere in a mod because, yeah, people have done a lot of cool stuff like that.
You know what the best part about this mod I'm now envisioning?
Yeah.
Is it works with the clowns I mentioned in previous iterations.
Did you suggest you thought they should add clowns?
Well, it's effectively just a replacement of the zombies. You just have like clowns because clowns can be creepy.
Yeah.
And so now they'd be rodeo clowns.
Oh my! Wow.
It all goes back, man. It all feeds in on itself, and you're having ideas with it.
These are good ideas. Yeah. And also the other thing I've been doing is reading more Game of Thrones. I've been trying to catch up because
Don't worry, at the pace he writes, you're going to get caught up.
Yeah, my strategy is to read the books first and then immediately after watch the same show as like that episode. So I'm trying to get caught up with everything that's been on, like aired so far.
Catch the little differences between them?
Yeah, that's what I want to do. And I'm sure there are big differences in some cases, but...
well, that only comes as you unveil and read the season or the book's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, okay, the arc was changed or refined, however you want to look at it. There's Lord knows there's enough people debating whether or not it is a corruption or a refinement.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can't give my take on it quite yet because I'm still behind. But anyways,
but you're enjoying it though, right?
I am. Oh, so much. I like Game of Thrones, the book. Like I picked it up. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, but I'm really just like. I just read every page and I just like, this is so awesome, so good.
He's got awesome on every page.
Yeah.
Okay, we can put that on the inner book quote leaf for now. This is awesome on every page, just for living. The Simulationist.
He probably doesn't need that at this point because so many people like the books.
On the other hand, are they willing to put up such a wonderful line about the nature of the book?
Oh, well, I hope.
Awesome on every page. It's kind of hard to beat a recommendation like that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I think that about covers what I've been doing. So we'll pass it on over to you and find out what you've been doing simulation-wise.
Well, that's good because, reality's been kicking me pretty harsh this week. It's nothing nasty, mind you, but my goodness, does it wear you down around the edges. But I've been reading more Shadowrun.
Good.
Both from the website, the official website now. I'm looking at that Shadowrun Returns. They've got their whole year of the Shadowrun and their online game, which I've seen the trailers of like several months back, and the gameplay trailers are looking mighty sweet. I may have to get in on that, even if it costs me money to do so.
Ooh,
wow. So that's my recommendation. I'd pay money for this.
Looking like someone who's been working full time.
Someone who definitely has to count his tips, we'll say.
Yeah.
But I've been looking at that, but what I've really been digging into is some of their older material. And I've been digging into the Renraku Arcology Shutdown book, so I can finally find what they've been referencing when everyone says, oh yes, the arcology in downtown Seattle is shut down, no one can get in or out, no one knows what's going on. I wanted to learn, and so I've been learning.
Yes, you mentioned this in I think maybe a couple of iterations.
But I'm finally deep into the book. I'm a little bit beyond halfway through, and I'm into the actual mechanic parts, so you can play it as part of a game. And I'm both a little happy and a little sad that I've gotten that far. Because on the one hand, yay, mechanics, now I get to see the actual numbers that are attached to everything. Mm-hmm. How would the runners I create compare against these nasty beasts or scenarios? On the other hand, I really enjoyed the fluff. I enjoyed the stories. I like especially what they did with it. Mm-hmm. The arcology is not a small place. It's like a truncated pyramid sort of thing, approximately just underneath a kilometer in height. This is not a small structure.
Very tall. How tall do you remember the Burj Khalifa? Is that a kilometer?
It's over that. I know that the Burj Khalifa is bigger than that.
Okay.
But let's say this is a pretty big arcology. That's how you're able to fit 100,000 people in. And so I was wondering, how are they going to tell the story of the shutdown? And what I found is they didn't tell the story of the shutdown. They told many stories.
Well, that's good. It's a good approach.
And I found it to be perhaps the best approach for such a thing, because it was such a big thing. So many people were saying, oh my goodness, this is mysterious. The military can't get in. Nobody can find out what's going on. It's completely shut off from all what's called the Matrix, but it's basically future internet. Yeah. The Matrix is locked out from them. No one knows what the heck is going on. You can't even send magicians in, man. There's astral wards going up. You can't see what's going on in there unless you read the book. And so I did. And it was interesting. There's a short story that they got of a 10-year-old boy. He was writing his notes down in his new little pocket secretary. It was like a journal for him. The arcology shuts down officially for the outside world on the 19th of December. He doesn't realize there's anything really wrong until at least the 24th.
What, he thought he was just lost or something?
No. All he experienced with his family was during supper, the lights went out for a minute, and that was it. Because it's such a big place, there's so many things to do on every floor for the residential areas. There's a hospital. There's some parks to play in, artificial parks, of course. There's like an amusement park on every level. Not like a huge one, of course, but there's an amusement park there for kids to have fun. And they were able to keep things isolated enough for certain people in certain areas. It took them 5 days to realize the true horror he was in.
Interesting. And so I guess the idea is
I won't spoil things too much,
Like as parents do, they're like protecting him and sort of shielding him.
To some degree, yes. But it took them a while to figure out what was going on.
It reminds me actually of a podcast I listened to not long ago, and I think I mentioned this before, but George Takei was telling his story about how he was, I don't know how he was, 5 or 6, I think, so younger than when his family was taken by the American government and put in an American concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, like basically, well, until basically it was over, he didn't know what was going on. Like he
was camping.
Is like, yeah, our family's just moving, and yeah, there are guys with guns, but they're, I don't know, they're the police or whatever.
Yeah.
However they describe them, or so.
They're there for protection.
So it's funny that, yeah, a kid can go through an experience like being put in a concentration
Which
camp.
would be traumatizing under almost any definitive criteria, but is protected enough that, no, it was just like a summer camp sort of thing.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if they experience things like beatings or anything. I hope not, but I'm not familiar enough with the story. But in other countries that certainly did happen, that there would be like actual physical trauma. And in this case, it's being moved forcibly. Maybe you go to a new place, so that's, and like your parents aren't fully comfortable with where you are. So yeah, there's problems. But they do their best to protect the kid and to keep the kid thinking that this is like we're having a normal life, even though we have to move halfway across the country. And like I don't know, they may have been handcuffed. I don't think so, but they're like forced.
Weren't given a lot of leeway as to where they could go.
Yeah,
they're not stopping off to see the world's largest ball of twine. Although that would have been a very nice break from the horror that the parents were enduring. Oh yeah, nice ball of twine. Nice. Okay, back into onto the railway. Okay, let's go. But no, it was actually an interesting thing. Little creeping things. I found it to be a very good horror story. Because a good horror story doesn't just go, monster is thrown at you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No, it builds to it. And so, 1 minute power out. And then it's, he talks to the aunt who gave him the little pocket secretary. It was a Christmas present he got to open early. She's wearing the same outfit as she was the last time he talked to her. And she's saying the same sort of things, almost irregardless of what he's telling her. And then it's the neighbor, down the way, who's of the same age. He and his father go down for shopping, in the shopping center down at the bottom, and they're gone for 2 days before they finally come back. And the kid comes back with shiny new cyber eyes, and it's the future. Cyber eyes are a thing. It's cosmetic, not necessarily good for kids because still growing and all that. They got to get replaced eventually. But, and then it's things like the dad's having a real hard time at work. The kid is only 10, doesn't really understand it. But the dad was saying how half the workforce didn't show up that day. He had to do twice the amount of work just before he could get home today. At least, the company gave like a little doll for his sister. A doll that talks to her in the middle of the night.
Oh, great. And
so it builds. Those little things. It seems, because a good horror story, when you start reading through, it's just like little unconnected strands.
I'll ask you a question. Like, do you think that? Do you think the writers, when they came up with this, do you think that they thought of a plot first and said, "Okay, here's we're gonna spin this out this way," or do you think they decided, "I have a great idea. It's shut down. We don't know why. We'll figure it out later"?
Oh, that's the thing. From what I've been reading, it appears that it's a follow-up from some of their novels, from some of their previous adventure arcs.
Yeah.
And so they take a bit from this and a bit from that, and it all weaves together into a tapestry of, that's what's happening in there. So if you're really following the undercurrents, the meta story of Shadowrun as you read the adventure modules, or play them, however you do it, read the novels, it all starts coming together, and you can see, oh, yeah, this was going to happen. It was only a matter of time, really.
So you think, like, this is what I'm wondering, is if the people over at, I think it would have been FASA
at the time. Yeah.
Like, if they had an office with a whiteboard with all of the different plot threads actually, laid out and written, and here's where we're going to throw a hint in here, and here's where we're going to throw a hint in there.
I think it was more like a bunch of people who could tell a story, and they had a bunch of them together, and then everyone says, okay, this is what I'm going for, and then they get like greenlit by management, says, okay, your storyline works, we like what you're doing, we'll get you out for a couple of adventures here, we'll have you talk with this writer here, he'll help you, he'll effectively write the novel for you, you'll be busy elsewhere, and then we got a big splat book for you, your own full splat book, it'll be amazing.
Oh, sounds like a fun place to work.
It was, by all accounts. And then they realized, you know what, as gaming companies go, this is about as good as we're ever going to do. Let's officially close our doors and leave while we're ahead. Because a lot of gaming companies never stopped until they were deep into the red.
And there may have been politics, too, at some level.
Well, of course. I mean, in a game setting that involves a lot of conspiracy ideas and behind-the-scenes boardroom stuff, that was always a concept. I haven't heard anything leak out. I do know a lot of people that were working at FASA started up a second company that took the Shadowrun product under their wing for as long as they could.
Right. Yeah.
It's changed hands a few times, but always found somebody who loves it, who's willing to take it, and that's a mark of a good product, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, and it has a fan base. It has a fan base that keeps on going. It's funny because I don't count myself among the fans, but I have I guess I have an appreciation for the setting.
Well, I think as a gamer, I have appreciation for any setting that manages to survive.
Yeah, that's true. And I suppose just being interested in the history of gaming, you have to know about some things like Shadowrun and the whole idea of not steampunk, cyberpunk. And steampunk, for that matter. Well,
that's the thing, is if you're big into the cyberpunk genre, there's a little bit of animosity between the cyberpunk 2020, 2040, 2050, whatever the number they're up to now, setting, and the Shadowrun. It's not unlike the Warcraft and the Warhammer people.
Nice.
They're both telling what's effectively the same story, in some cases.
Orcs versus humans.
Something like that, or if you go with the StarCraft versus the Warhammer 40,000.
Okay.
It's Marines in space fighting monsters.
Yeah.
One person likes it a little more, we'll say kiddie, a little more polished. Another side likes it a little gritty, a little dark, a little messy.
Yeah. Ooh, dark and gritty.
And honestly, I've always equated it out to the battle between peanut butter. Do you like crunchy or do you like smooth? There's no right answer. There's just your answer.
No, the right answer is crunchy.
Really? I always like the natural stuff, which came out smooth.
Well, no.
But you got to mix it up first, otherwise it comes out hard and chunky at the bottom.
Natural peanut butter tend to be chunky.
It depends on how well you grind it. And I like it ground smooth. I like it so that by the time you get it, there's that layer of oil on the top, and you got to mix it up again properly.
Okay. So
my peanut butter's a hands-on product. It's not just open and use. It takes an investment.
Well, hang on. There's no amount of stirring that you can do to change peanut butter from... a human hand cannot...
No, but it separates out it's been ground so fine, the oil will separate out from it, and it'll get hard down to the bottom, and I got to mix it back up again. Admittedly, if I could find an all-natural place that would just grind up peanut butter for me and put it in a small container, I'd probably buy that and just be done with it. But I like the investiture of it. I like the work I have to put in. Just the same way, when I'm playing my D&D, when I'm doing my stuff, I work hard at my characters. I create my own spells. I do my own stuff. I start thinking about extra rule sets.
I think maybe the difference between you and me, though, is just that the work I like to put in is chewing the crunchy peanut butter, because that's extra work. And you like to do the extra work outside the body.
But before I even start enjoying it, man, that's how I enjoy it, my pre-enjoyment.
Yeah, warm up. No, but I suppose I can't say you're 100% wrong.
Well, that's the thing. There's no right answer, wrong answer
right.
for peanut butter. There's no right answer, wrong answer for which of the two, settings within the genre you like.
Yeah, you're right about that. That much.
Well, I don't think I'm wrong, at least. But there was other stories in there about things that, from moment one, so-and-so's friend just gets ripped to shreds, just cut in half. Ooh. And stories about people put, into horrible, like Mendeleev, just nasty, not seen in a century style torture. And people getting hooked up to the matrix, the internal matrix of the arcology, and just experimented on a mental level until they break. Until there's nothing but a pile of corpses left in the room in the real world. Ooh. Yeah, pretty gruesome stuff. And the mall itself, had wonderful green spaces in there too. The creatures in the zoo and in the fairgrounds and all that were released, so they're now running what's effectively semi-wild in a mall, hunting each other and the people who have managed to escape the big bad threat. So there's other threats sitting around there, in addition to some illegal stuff that Renraku was working with, some rather nasty virus-infected people.
Sounds like a good excuse to use your random encounter table.
Well,
like random encounter, cheetah. A cheetah in a mall? What? Sure, it escaped from the
it escaped from floor 202, and it's been going down the stairwell for, a little bit, and it's decided to stop off here, and it smells you, and it's hungry. So let's go for an initiative pass, Jack, eh? But, it is quite interesting, because Shadowrun is known for not being the most benevolent of games. It's kind of lethal sometimes. Mm-hmm. And this is, by far from what I've read, a much higher degree of lethality.
So it's kind of like the Tomb of Horrors of the Shadowrun setting.
Pretty damn much, actually, yeah. If you want to have an interesting campaign for it, you could try being the Resistance members, the people hiding in the little bits that can't be seen, like the ductworks, in some of the aqua tanks, that were used for regenerating water and for the farm fields, because it had its own farms in there. It can feed 100,000 people indefinitely. Huh. So there's areas that you can hide that aren't being looked at, aren't being viewed. It's a big space, but they're not being non-viewed for very long. They're always being watched eventually, so you got to keep moving. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting, very different style from we go to weapons world, load up on guns, and then we assassinate the target, we get paid. Let's go home.
Yeah, so you can't get out, right?
Well, there is some ways in or out. From what I've read, there's 2 ways.
Are you spoiling things? Or?
Well, there's been some suppositions about some ways in. Seattle does have what's called the Orc Underground, which is literally a system of underground passageways.
Cool.
The old Seattle, those of you who know your Seattle history, Seattle got put on top of Seattle. After an earthquake, they just decided we're going to build on top of this stuff, and then just ignore what's down below.
Wait, is this
That's
real?
Real life, yeah. Okay. There's an old Seattle underneath Seattle. It's the Seattle Underground, which the orcs appropriate in the future, which is a weird sentence when I think about it. But yeah, the orcs appropriate underground Seattle, becomes the Orc Underground, so it's all over. They've expanded it. There's stuff all over the place. Not, like on the present rat tunnels or anything, but...
yeah. Oh.
And then, there's apparently someone was driving trying to drive out when the doors were all closing. Their vehicle got crushed. But there's a small gap in one of the closing spots, just maybe 2 feet at most, to crawl under. However, there's all the dangers of all the horrible stuff on the inside, and there's actually landmines on the strip on the outside. That was part of their security defenses, remote-operated landmines.
That's great.
So, yeah, no one can safely get to there or get away from there unless they're either completely invisible or really, really quick. Or you just send up enough people that all the landmines get detonated first and then you go. But most people don't have enough spare characters to do that.
Well, couldn't you use robots or something?
That takes a lot of robots and drones, and yes, they are there, but that involves a lot of scrap metal and a lot of bad terrain by the time you get there. Yeah. And I've got to say, some of the threats in there, you don't want to have any obscure terrain anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's probably better just to skip the arcology then.
Any sane person would. On the other hand, there are reasons to go in there. There's 100,000 people ostensibly trapped in there. Some of them very important, very valued, like researchers, top executives of the corporation. So if you're willing to brave it, there's a good payoff for getting some extractions out if the people are still alive. There's huge amounts of pay data in there. There was all sorts of experiments being run. If you can go in there, you can get some data off of their matrix files. That is worth some huge money to the corporation, to the corporation's enemies, the other corporations. You can sell it to the highest bidder. Hopefully survive, because that's kind of the point of playing most times, is survival.
Yeah.
And then there's sometimes just to stick it to the big bad. So I'm going in just to show them you can't do that to anybody here in Seattle. We're too tough for that. Yeah.
Is that a spoiler? Is there a big bad?
Well, ostensibly, it's your campaign whenever you're running it. You can have it be a big bad. You could have it be 3 big bads competing in there internally. You can make it whatever you want. You could have it inside there, the whole thing just crushed. It's another dimension in there entirely. It's now a gateway.
Oh, that sounds good.
If you want to do it that way, that's yours, and that's completely right. They even said so. It's your campaign. Do it what you want. Don't let this force you.
Ah, very good.
So yes, I found, though, that instead of one big story, the several small stories made the setting seem bigger. It made it seem badder.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great to me. And it sounds like, in some ways, that's the only way you can really approach something like that, because the official story will miss so many details. Like, the official story would be about, the power players and
a few people, big important people,
yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the power players are mentioned in some of the stories.
Yeah.
The higher up executives, some of them are being seen, apparently doing stuff that they shouldn't have, or interests they've never shown before. Very odd. Nice loose threads that any game master can pick up and say, I'm working it this way, into their own story. Mm-hmm. But they're mentioned quickly. That's never their story. It's about the other people, the small people.
Yeah.
The 17-year-old girl who's now forced to try and survive. The person who manages to actually sneak in and see what the Matrix is like in there now. What's going on? What's up with the people? There was, when things first got bad, they managed to send in like a SWAT team. What happened with them? That was a very interesting story.
Ah, okay. Well, so where can people read these particular stories?
Well, of course, as I'm a fan of used books, hunt them down. Hunt Amazon, hunt eBay, hunt your local used bookstores.
So you're looking for Shadowrun?
Shadowrun? Well, heck, any Shadowrun used thing you can get, as long as it's in good condition, going to be almost a guaranteed good read.
But which one has the Renraku stories?
It's Renraku Arcology Shutdown is the name of it, the official one. That said, I do believe they may be working with some PDF re-releases. I'd have to double check on that to see who owns the rights on that, because as I said, it's been switched hands a couple times within the last 5-10 years. So I'd have to guarantee, because maybe they had it under the one guy, the WizKids logo, but now it's underneath the next guys with Catalyst Games, so maybe it's not anymore. I'd have to double check on that. But I'm always a fan of the hunt, so check your local, used bookstore, hunt them down, have fun.
Yeah. I was saying because I may not be able to find necessarily a link to some of these.
No, I don't believe it's put out for everybody to enjoy. At least not yet. Like I said, people who love it keep finding a way into owning the license, at least for a little while. So if they can get the old product with them, they could re-release it in a PDF format, make some decent side change for those who were never able to get it the first time around. I mean, I've got some in my collection I've been able to accumulate throughout the years, some second edition, some third edition. It cobbles together, but I gotta say, you may have to hunt a little hard. Those who buy it tend to love it and have a hard time releasing it.
Well, that's too bad. What? Anything else that? Let's see.
That was the big one.
It's
just the concept of, instead of one big story, if you have a big story to tell, sometimes a bunch of little stories telling a grand whole. Altogether, it becomes like a stained glass window. Each one story shows a nice little fragment, little coloration. It's when you stand back when you're done and look at the whole thing at what's exactly happening. It's like, oh my, it's so, oh my.
Okay.
So, yes, I found it to be a good read, and from the perspective of, an aspiring writer, or just anybody who's a fan of writing styles, I found the small collection of shorter stories better than the one big story.
Ah, yeah.
It was the way to go, and as a bonus, you can have it so that every protagonist dies in the short story. That's okay, I suppose. There's another short story. Maybe someone will survive in the next one.
Well, it reminds me of Game of Thrones too, because the style that's written is it's very much, each chapter is its own kind of story. Like they do, I mean, it's novel-like, so they do build on each other. But he writes in such a way that they're kind of self-contained, the chapters. And then I haven't got to the point where people are dying left and right yet, but I think it's coming soon, anyways. But I figure that he's got a similar mentality, in that if each chapter is its kind of self-contained little story, then if you kill a character in one of them, well, then that's what that story needed, and then move on to the next story, which may involve some of the same characters or may not.
It's a very interesting tactic. I think doesn't get used often enough for a style, and it just even occurs to me, such a style for that works well with the fan base. Because what they could do is have like an annual writing contest, Arcology Stories, an Arcology anthology. And they take, everybody's able to submit, their own short story about, like, involving their arcology. Mm-hmm. Every year the top 3 people get picked, and those are considered canon. It's actually happened there. That's what goes on. And it just adds to the whole thing. It adds an accumulates.
That's a good idea.
And it's a nice way of paying back the fan community, is saying you can contribute too, which is actually what they're going to be doing with the video game. Mm-hmm. The actions of the players for the certain arcs will help determine the future of the Shadowrun setting.
Okay.
And so I dig it. I mean, it worked very well for the Legend of the Five Rings setting. Mm-hmm. They got a very loyal fan base that way, and Shadowrun's already quite loyal for its fans, so I think it could be a nice symbiosis for everybody. Because everyone wants to feel like they want to contribute for what they love, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, no one wants to feel like they're left out. It's an exclusive thing. That's why some of the reasons why Star Trek was so popular. Their fanzines were allowed to be published. People were allowed to utilize their characters, not for commercial purposes. And it became inclusive.
Yeah, that's true.
So, clearly you can do worse than imitating that sort of stuff. But yes, that was my big thing for this week.
Cool, okay. You also had, moving on to more of the meat of the podcast, we have some, what is it?
A quick campaign note. Yes.
Okay.
Well, this week was the running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain.
We saw that on TV, and some other people may have seen that.
I don't think there was any deaths this year, just a couple injuries. So, congratulations, hooray. Yeah. But it occurs to me, whenever I see the running of the bulls, this is character. This is a quirk for a local setting.
Okay, yeah.
If you were to incorporate the running of the bulls in like your D&D campaign, people would say, "Oh, that's a really weird thing," but they'd remember it. Suddenly, that town that they passed, it had, "Oh, that's where they had the bulls run down the street. We joined in with that." Yeah. I took like a hoof in the back, and I took, what was it? What was it again? Oh, that's right. You took a horn in the back of the head. Well, that's why I can't remember. And it adds to it, and people will remember it because it had character. The city has character that way.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree, but I want to give a caveat, which is to say that if you directly rip off Running of the Bulls, you may have players saying, "Oh, it's Running of the Bulls." It's like, "Oh, yeah, because that happens in Spain." That you just borrowed that from real world. Well,
keep in mind, if you're playing D&D, you're not just restricted to bulls.
Well, Running of the Beholders.
Or it could be the chasing of the raptors. The entire city gets put up with the huge fences down the way. All the first 2 stores are locked. The prisoners condemned to death for the year are released on one end of the town, and in the center, the raptors are released. Not birds, mind you. I'm talking about the lizards, the dinosaurs, the velociraptors.
Yeah.
And then people get to sit on the rooftops and watch as the condemned are hunted down. And I don't know, suppose like at the end of the day, Big Bell is rung. velociraptors come back, any criminal still left on the streets gets to live another year in prison. Or maybe they earn their freedom that way. Depends on how you want your society to go.
Oh, no, that's a good idea. But the other thing is, like...
It would explain why you could have an entire town set up with a fortress-style design. Right corners, and so the whole thing is like, once a year, bam, it becomes a dungeon.
Yeah. Well, and I want to point out, though, too, the running of the bulls event. I don't know how it originated, but it seems to me the kind of thing, like I can imagine, that this may have been how it went, is that they ran the bulls to market, or I don't know, to whatever, and then they had a show at the market. They were like, oh, we're going to have a show of us, slaughtering the bulls. And
I think it's actually for the bullfighting stuff. Is they get them from A to B that way, and then it's, time for the bullfighting.
Yeah, I think the bullfighting, I don't know where that originated either, but...
that falls in the same category as cockfights and bear baiting. It's one of those, let's prove humanity's tougher by fighting animals in an unfair setup.
I think ultimately, the idea was to slaughter the bull and have meat, right? Or
in the end, apparently a lot of the bulls are killed, so you can do something with them.
Yeah, we eat beef anyways.
We eat pretty much everything.
Might as well play with our food first.
Well, yeah, you want to make sure it's like, ooh, that one put up a fight. I'll take the flank off of him.
Yeah. But I imagine that part of this whole exercise of the running of the bulls was originally it's sort of practical. It's like getting the bulls from A to B, and then you have to have some guys to run to be like the guiders who, like, I don't know, the cowboys or whatever. I guess for some reason they're not riding horses. I don't know.
Horses cost money. They're expensive things, man. Just run ahead of them. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
And then at some point, like, this was sort of a semi-professional thing. It's like, we're the guys who guide the bulls through. And then, like, tourists started joining in, and, like, the rich people
it probably
I'm going to try that.
It probably got notoriety first. Like, someone wrote about it. It's like, in my travels through Spain.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure this is all on Wikipedia, so you can probably read it. But that's my thoughts on that.
But yes, I find that those just things that add character to it just so much enhance. Because now when you hear Pamplona, you think, oh yeah, that's where they do the running of the bulls. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to be careful when you go there. You go there at the wrong time, you take a wrong turn down the street, bam, bold.
Yeah. So how do you, like, in your campaign world, like, how would you invent something like that? You'd have to think of some industry or activity that your city partakes in. Or
it could just be connected to historical events. I know over in Jerusalem they do the whole thing with Jesus and the Stations of the Cross, and they actually have people carry the big wooden crosses with them to mimic the thing. So it could be, in some cases you don't need an animal, you just have a historic reenactment of a famous event.
That's true.
And that's not a bad way of
some countries, they even will, like, people will crucify themselves, like, literally nailing themselves to crosses.
Which is pretty dang horrific when you think about it here. But in D&D, you got healing magic. So afterwards, it's like, they get free healing by the church. So it's really just a testament to their faith. Can they endure?
That would really freak me out if I was a player in a campaign where I was like, oh. But... I guess, it's cool.
Make a constitution check to avoid crying like a pansy. Okay, you succeed. After you get all healed up, everyone respects you for their tradition so strongly,
Yeah, that's good. The other one, they have, in Japan, they have this thing where they get on a huge log, like a giant tree, like, I don't know, 6 feet across or something like that, and they have, like, 20 guys sit on it, and they push the log, they slide it, like, pointed down the hill.
Oh, like poor man tobogganing. Yeah.
Well, I guess
that's what I've always seen it as. It's like, okay, you guys don't have the snow, you don't have the toboggans, you make do with what you can.
Have you seen this on, I don't know, YouTube or whatever?
I think I've seen it once or twice before. Yeah, they push them down the hill.
Well, they push the log down the hill, and then the goal of the men sitting on the logs
not to get crushed by the log if it rolls.
They try and stay on and. Failing staying on, not die, which apparently they do, and of course the running the bulls can be failed too. So my thought on that is that in order to come up with a tradition like this, you just have to think of the stupidest thing an Intelligence 3 character can do.
Well, I do recall an event happening up in Prince George where there would be a horribly muddy hill, and you'd get like furniture, and you try and find a way to get the furniture to go down the hill like it was like a skiing thing.
Surf the furniture or whatever.
Surf the furniture or skiing down it,
Yeah.
however you could. It was basically a way to get rid of old furniture, as opposed to what they seem to do here in Victoria, which is just put it on the curb, slap a free sticker on it, and ignore it. Which, by the way, is illegal. Don't do it. It looks ugly, and as soon as it rains, it's completely worthless.
Oh.
Nah.
I guess I won't be doing that anymore.
Well, not with anything that is a fabric. I mean, if you put out like a completely wooden chair, I'm sure that's fine. That'll.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just wipe that down when you're done. That's good stuff.
Okay. Well, yeah, that is an
It's the
interesting
fabric
quirk
stuff
about
there.
Victoria. Yeah.
Well, that's a quirk about it too. How would we get rid of it? Well, this whole fun thing. Outside of the town area, there's a trebuchet. Once a year, we have an amnesty. You manage to bring it down, and you get to pull the lever on your piece of furniture as we fling it across into a cliffside. Boom!
Well, that's funny, and that can work in some settings. But I want to remind you that in the D&D setting, which is sort of based on the medieval world, this is pre-industrial revolution and pre-mass manufacturing.
But that doesn't necessarily mean destroying things aren't something that people will do.
Okay.
I do recall a Native American First Nations tradition called the potlatch. It happened over on the West Coast, where a wealthy family of them would bring all their friends, all the the neighbors in, and they'd have a great big feast. Like, look how good we are. We've got so many animals here. And then they'd break stuff. They'd take their stuff and they'd break it. Show, look how good we are. We don't need this. It's a great looking stuff. I ruin it. I shatter this. And then it becomes a challenge to the others to outdo them. Now, this got outlawed in Canada because, as anybody with a manipulative mindset can see, if you want to drive someone to the utter breaking point, you find out how much you can sacrifice that they cannot, and then do it. And then watch as they drive themselves into ruination trying to match you.
So you think they outlawed it because...
That's exactly why they outlawed it.
Okay.
It's a thing. Look, potlatch, basically phonetic spelling. But not like a potlatch where everybody brings a bunch of food together and eats it.
That's potluck.
Yes. Which I have heard a number of people confusing. Potluck, potlatch. So, yes. There's a very different meaning, although food is involved in both cases.
Mm-hmm. Well, my understanding of the outlawing it was for basically colonial reasons, because it was cultural. It was just
they were destroying all their stuff. All their physical possessions were getting destroyed, and they were driving themselves into poverty that way.
Mm.
Just to keep up with the Joneses, which is a good lesson for anybody out there trying to keep up with the Joneses now. You'll drive yourself into poverty and ruination.
So you're not allowed to destroy all your stuff. You're not allowed to acquire as much stuff as you can. Which is it?
You got to find the healthy medium.
Okay.
What you can afford. It's okay if you want to destroy stuff, but don't destroy things that you can't replace. If you require your car to get to work, don't blow it up at a bonfire party. It's not that hard to understand.
It's funny because I don't think it's illegal to destroy your own things, like items, and nowadays, so if you could technically,
I could take all my books out one by one to a spot and set them on fire.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to do that, and
no,
that's weird because we don't like book burning, and yet we believe in the freedom to burn a book if you wanted to, sort of.
Yeah, if you really want to, go for it. I mean, especially if it's in bad condition. What else are you going to do?
What else are you going to
do? But no, it was outlawed because I guess it was a cultural thing that was causing poverty and ruination. It was really impairing some people's ability to live a happy life. They were feeling socially compelled to do this.
Yeah, I don't think that's really the case. But I mean, there's yes, it's true that they're destroying.
I'm sure, as with any event in history, it wasn't just one or the other. It was an interesting melange of reasons.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
But it was a reason there. They were destroying more than they could afford to comfortably destroy.
The government, the white government, gave that reason for outlawing it, saying that.
Honestly, in that case, it just sounds like a good idea. Say, no, knock it off. Knock it off, or at least keep it down to a dull roar. Okay, and let's get on with things.
Yeah, cut that out. But okay, how did we get onto that? Destroying things?
It's a cultural thing. You could have it so that in the wonderful city that you've got set up, the rich people once a year will replace their furniture. Mm-hmm. They just destroy all their furniture,
destroy it all,
and that gives the lower end of society. They have a huge industry making furniture. Who keeps buying all this furniture? The rich people every year. It's like a give back to poverty program.
Okay. Well, as long as the poor people have some kind of furniture, then I guess.
Well, I'm sure if nothing else, they could pick up some of the ruined stuff and fix it up. Yeah. I mean, they make furniture in this society for a living, according to me just now.
Yeah.
So they can probably repair some nice furniture. It'll be only a couple of years old. Heck, maybe it's even a fashion trend for them. The lower end, they don't have their own furniture. They refurbish furniture. They're more of a recycle, end of society there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and because
and it's really hard to destroy a bunch of down pillows. So pillows for all the poor people.
I think there is something to that, destroying items as a method of social catharsis. It's like we get together and we have this party and we destroy something. I mean, there's we have car smashings. And
yeah, I know a few things back when I was growing up where you'd get two $50 cars that were not going to be running for much longer, and you get them set up to drive into each other over top of a burning bonfire to see if there would be any explosions. Really hard to do. The answer was no. There's no explosions, and everyone wound up getting out, losing out on poor vehicles. They probably could have kept an extra couple months and driven around comfortably.
Yeah,
but it was really crude redneck science.
Okay, there's that. But have you seen the officially sanctioned version where it's they have a newish car, maybe not brand new, but newish car that they drive out into a nice park or whatever, and that the last time I saw this, it was at Clover Point. They had a newish car,
and they just thrash it with bats. Right?
You pay $5 for 5 hits, I think is what it is, and you get a sledgehammer or something, and just anybody who comes down, the general public, $5, 5 hits, just do as much damage as you can in 5 hits. So you get these big, young teenage boys who are some.
Tell you what, I'll pay you $5 for 5 hits, and I'll pay you $2 to take these hits for me. Aim for something important.
And you get these kids that they get up on the roof, they basically straddle it, and they smash down on the windshield. Oh, it's cool. But it's officially sanctioned. It's we do. This is what we do.
Especially if they clean up afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's somebody's job. It's somebody's job to clean it up, and I'm sure somebody emptied the oil out and everything too. But of course, you can never. It's always a little bit messy.
Put down a tarp. You'll be fine.
I'm not sure if they had what they had. I think they just did it on the grass, which
harsh.
seems not the best idea, but I don't know.
Come on, man. Even murderers put down a tarp. Are you worse than a murderer? Put down a tarp underneath that car.
What else do we have of destruction? Oh, I wanted to mention the Mythbusters, too, of course.
Oh, yes. Mythbusters goes through a lot of destruction in the name of science and entertainment.
Yeah, so that's good.
So, and that's caused a very interesting, we'll call it a quirk for the channel, the Discovery Channel there. It's been seen as their thing. What's the Discovery Channel? Yeah, that's right, they got Mythbusters. That's a lot of fun to watch. That's the same as, Pamplona, that's where they do the running of the bulls. Let's go watch.
Yeah, they have their own thing.
It's interesting, homologue, I think, is the best term for it.
Yeah.
But so that's an interesting way to add a lot of flavor, a lot of character to a location, is to put in these quirks, social or otherwise. Because, as we discussed with the whole Stations of the Cross, sometimes
do you remember
religious.
Smashing Day? Do you remember when we talked about that in one of the very early podcasts?
Just go bug nuts, smash what you... Which is interesting.
Or Day of Rage or whatever.
They came up with a movie plot for that.
Oh.
Yes. Apparently it's not a great one. But yeah, once, one night of the year from sunset to sunrise, apparently, you're allowed to do whatever. It's all legal. There are no repercussions for what you do.
Oh, you know what I should mention, too, is human sacrifice, because real-world cultures have had that in the past.
Both as a punishment and as, it's you're so lucky you get to be sacrificed to the gods. Your blood is spilled for them.
And yeah, sometimes it would be like the king or somebody royal would be
A
like
royal sacrifice.
Yeah.
It definitely keeps down on the number of royalty. You have to keep an opulent lifestyle, and it's a nice way for them to avoid having to kill each other off.
Yeah, or it might be their method of killing each other. So, sort of.
I don't know. That seems a little more industrious than most royal people have historically proven themselves to be when it comes to killing each other off.
Yeah, you're probably right. And my suspicion, because I don't really know too much about real-world human sacrifice, but my suspicion is that it happens in spurts, and it's sort of like maybe if they establish it as this is our tradition, it might last a couple generations, and then they're like, well, we don't actually do that, and then
we don't have enough members anymore to keep this up. You're going to have to give us a little time to do some stretching exercises, give us some Barry White music, and a little alone time here.
Yeah, and then a few generations down the line, somebody's like, man, I hate my brother, and he's like always trying to get the throne from me. And what's this in this old book about how we used to have human sacrifice? I should bring that back.
It's good for tradition that way. Yes. Establish your traditional roots again.
But I suppose, yeah, you could throw that into your D&D setting, right?
That would be the equivalent of like the professional leagues, and most royalties seem okay with the amateur leagues of killing each other off with poison and daggers.
Yeah, true.
Oh, and foolhardy wars to neighboring countries where they have no chance of winning.
So it would be a truly strange kingdom, or
it would mark a very efficient kingdom for them to actually move up to the professional leagues in this case.
Could do that.
I don't see that working for elves, but I could definitely see that working for like a goblin kingdom, because goblins are historically, oh my goodness, they breed worse than like dogs and rats, like cross combined. There's horrible numbers of goblins in almost any campaign setting. They just keep popping up all over. That's why you're able to fight them off in waves when you're at moderate levels.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do they keep their royal numbers in check? Sacrifice. Keep the evil gods appeased for another year.
Well, the Drow must have something like that. Or do they just do the whole...
I think their official Forgotten Realms religious statements say their god prefers that they kill each other off with daggers and poison and behind-the-scenes treachery. It keeps their wits sharp. I'll admit there's a logic behind there. I don't know how foolproof it is, but there's a logic.
Well, it works for a D&D setting, and it evokes some sort of feeling. So that's good.
Honestly, most of the entire Underdark is completely illogical. So I'm willing to let almost anything slide. Yeah. It's a whole mess of, no, that would not be likely to happen, to downright ludicrous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm willing to let almost anything slide down there.
Very good.
But yes, I think that's a nice topic for helping build up flavor to a campaign, to a setting, so to speak. But I think we should move on to the main topic, of which I think we have about a half hour left to talk, 40 minutes.
Yeah, about that.
All right. So, who watches The Watchmen? We did. Shortly before the podcast began.
So I guess this could be considered an extension of our What Have We Been Doing This Week, but we actually decided to make this its own segment. And it's a cross between a review and an analysis and whatever.
Well, I found it to be interesting is that you come once again from the fresh start position. You have not read the book. You've never seen the movie before.
That's right. Yeah.
I've been looking at snippets of the book for years here and there I found online. And then I eventually got the book, and I saw the movie, and I've enjoyed them several times each since. So I come from the position of the firmly entrenched. I've read everything on the Wikipedia, and of the okay, this is what they were doing here and there. So we come at it from two different angles, and I think that's a nice perspective to take things from. So, what do you think of the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I liked it. I enjoyed it very much. I liked the music. I liked the fighting. I liked the character of... I liked how I didn't like Rorschach at the beginning. Is he the main character? I'm not sure if he's considered...
I think technically the main character is supposed to be the comedian, even though he dies at the beginning. Okay. And that's not a spoiler, don't worry. You'd learn that pretty quick.
I think this will have spoilers in it, though.
Yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed.
So, yeah, if you are listening to this...
we gave you a pretty darn good podcast up to this point. If you don't want spoilers, consider it truncated from here on out. See you next week.
Yeah, thank you. Come back to this episode. But, you're not. You're gone. Sorry. Okay, the people who are still with us.
All right.
You have been warned. So any details, we give out.
I like what you mentioned, though, because for the movie, I found the music and the violence both to be of an interestingly different caliber than what I see in movies. The violence, in particular, served a purpose. I tried to get into the Saw series, the Hostel series. The violence was there for the sake of violence, and, oh, look at how nasty it is. I've never seen violence that openly depicted. Wow! It didn't really seem to further the plot. It didn't seem to have a purpose.
Well, I've only seen Saw 1, the original Saw, and I think the point of the violence was the violence. So, I did enjoy that movie.
You could make an argument about it being a system of purification to help redeem the people in there, but that's a bit of an uphill fight.
Well, I think that's, in a sense, what... who is it that... Am I going all the way back to Aristotle? I think maybe Aristotle, with the whole idea that you watch a play to see suffer. You watch a tragedy. That's what they had in the ancient Greek times. They had tragedy and comedy. But the reason you would watch tragedy was to endure the suffering and not have to endure it yourself, and therefore achieve some kind of purification or release of some kind.
I don't know if he would have endorsed Saw, though.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know if those ancient Greeks did things like fake blood, and I think they might have even used animal blood.
I've been told they had some very nice tricks back in the day, both for theatrics as well as for their temple tricks.
And I think in Shakespeare's time they had all kinds of cool fake blood effects, and it wouldn't have been as good as we have now, but
no, but it was still very effective. You stabbed me, and blood comes down out of the wound, so you can see, this is where you got stabbed, man. That's realism.
Yeah.
As opposed to the flensing of a body where you see in high definition detail exactly what's going on with the muscle.
And that's a very cool modern development that we have in movies.
I like the fact that we have the ability to do that. I would have liked to see it used a little bit more responsibly.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, there's different levels, and it's funny because the guys who do this, and girls, the ladies and gentlemen who work in that industry, to them it's just fun. It's just let's create this mock-up of a plastic leg that's all ripped apart, and how can we make it look like a real flesh? And,
well, to be fair, that's always the thing. You don't want it to look wrong.
Yeah.
Even though it seems with blood, most people get it so wrong. They get it like paint when it's not.
Well, I can't even tell, because I watch movies and I ask myself when I see something like somebody breaking a leg or breaking an arm or something, I think to myself, now, is that real? And I think, well, I guess I've never seen something like that, so I don't really know.
And you're a lucky person.
And yes, I think.
But I notice whenever I get a cut, or I see someone else with a cut and there's blood coming out of it, it's very dark. It's very almost black with the red on the outline, sort of thing. And it's not until it smears out or anything like that you really see it as being red. But when you see it in the movies, it tends to be showed as like red paint.
Yeah, well, I think there is a difference between arterial blood and vein blood. So if you cut your finger or something like that, that's blood that's already been to your tissues,
the thing is,
right?
Once it gets out into the open, it oxygenates. So it all becomes that.
Yeah, but I hear from what is, sorry if this is bloody, but arterial blood that's fresh from if you got your arm cut off or something like that, and you were spurting arterial blood, that would be a brighter, pinkish color.
Well, especially if it's spurting, because it's oxidizing at a much different rate than the traditional paper cut.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't really know.
Clearly though, we can say that a lot of people in the industry are still working towards that perfection when they can't get blood to look like blood. Even in vampire movies.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole people's jobs. There's some guy somewhere whose job is the guy who makes fake blood.
Of course, mind you, these days,
in Hollywood,
there's people that say, well, if we made blood look like blood, people wouldn't recognize it because they're used to this look of fake blood so much.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
So they're caught in their own web, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like the spider fly caught in its own web.
So that's the violence covered.
But no, I quite liked
You
it
have
because
more?
there was that one bit where they were the Silk Spectre and Night Owl in their civilian identities were fighting a bunch of punks. Well, Dr. Manhattan was giving an interview,
Yeah.
and he was talking about how the fact that the person he knew died of cancer doesn't matter. He says functionally, a living body and a dead body have the same number of particles. It doesn't really matter if they're alive or dead. It's irrelevant. To show his detachment from humanity. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, they're fighting and knocking bones out of arms and stabbing necks and cracking things, and oh my goodness.
I actually missed that connection, but yeah.
It to show that no, listen, there is a difference between alive and dead, and especially how you go. So the violence in that part was actually artistic and had a meaning behind it. And I found that to be, I won't say beautiful because it was kind of gory, but from a poetic standpoint, it was very meaningful.
Yeah. Well, I think, there needs to be a word. I think it might be sublime is the word, because there's a word for something that is...
or maybe just poetic in that it had many different meanings.
Well, you call it beautiful, but it's obviously something ugly, and this comes up in discussions of what is true art, because you can paint a painting that is very ugly. It's like of an ugly subject, but you would call the painting beautiful because it somehow speaks to you. I think,
or at least it's highly proficiently drawn.
Yeah, something like that. And the word might be sublime, but I might be using that wrong. But I think it's something.
I think it qualifies in there.
Yeah.
But so I quite like that. I found the music to be equivalent to the names they were using, the celebrities. They used Richard Nixon. They used Iacocca. They had. I think they made a quick visual reference to Andy Warhol in there at one point.
Yeah, he was doing paintings of Night Owl, right?
Yeah, instead of like soup cans, it was Night Owl.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting way of putting these fictional characters into what would be seen as a real world background, is by interspersing them with celebrities, and in this case the music, to help show when things were happening.
Well, I enjoyed that because so often in comic books it's like we invent this fake history, and like we put our heroes in, this is what happened in history, and our heroes did this and that in history. But in this one, they sort of fakeified our history, like the real world history, a little bit.
Well, let's face it, they did make Vietnam the 51st state at one point. Which, by the way, I do note they changed the American flag for the amount of stars at the right point in time. So those of you who actually know your American flag well enough will have been able to notice that there was one extra star on the flag before it was ever mentioned that Vietnam became the 51st state. So
I did not notice that.
No, you'd have to be very proficient at noticing the amount of spots on there, because there's already 50 stars on the flag. You'd have to recognize the pattern.
Well, I think I can see that. I would have noticed. I just wasn't looking for it, I think.
Well, that's another point I want to come in on a bit. But the music also helped to put points for the dates as to when things were going on.
Okay.
The police allowed riots that were going on. Shortly after Vietnam became the 51st state, they played Boogeyman. I'm your Boogeyman.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a disco hit. You can date when that happened by the music playing in the background. And so it actually wound up, for those who know when the music came out, say, it was this year, or it couldn't have been before this point in time.
I said I liked the music. I didn't say I knew what it meant. Geez, no, I have no idea.
Well, I know the general time some of these songs were going, or so you can help get a sense, because the telling of the story is very non-linear. It doesn't happen, from 19X, to the year 2000.
It's a lot of flashbacks.
It is, and so that very much helps keep the pace of things as to when this scene is happening, just to make sure you don't forget.
I suppose. So let me ask you this: you read the books.
Mm-hmm.
Did the books have reference to music?
Not as such. There'd be stuff in the background. There was more details in the background that you just can't put into a single movie.
Okay.
That help detail these things. And so it was a quick and easier guide for, the 2-hour time limit you have to tell a movie.
They did. They repeated the motif of the headline like a whole bunch of times. Probably a dozen or more times throughout the movie. They had different headlines.
Well, keep in mind that back in 1985, when this was happening, headlines were the thing. Headlines were like your Twitter feed. Headlines were like your news app. It's how you got your information.
Well, technically, newspapers still exist.
They still exist,
headlines
but people don't get their information immediately from that as much anymore.
Right.
If something happens, the Marriage Act that the Supreme Court went through, and passed on saying, this Defense of Marriage Act is non-constitutional. You could have gotten your information from a newspaper, but you wouldn't have found out about that until tomorrow. You could have gotten the information from the CNN website, from Fox, but that would have taken you to the end of the hour. If you wanted to find out the information as soon as possible, you had to hit Twitter. Mm-hmm. And it was the top trending topic.
Well, Google News seems to do.
Google News works just a stagger step behind Twitter. But it's still there at on the instant level. When it happens, it starts making news. You start getting it.
By the way, listeners, I happen to be on Twitter. You can send me a tweet. I'm at Bootbuckle. You can look for me as Josh Trelevin if you like. You can also look for us on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Simulationist. And where else are we? YouTube.com/The Simulationist.
Mind you, in our own defense, we don't update instant news ourselves. We're about a once a week sort of thing. But we make up for the lack of instantaneousness with quality and heart.
Heart, I'll give you. Quality, we're working on.
Well, I think we have a very idea-rich environment, so I
yes.
qualify that as qualify rather than quantity.
Well, in the fact that we have, I think we have good thoughts.
Yeah.
I like to do the
or at least thoughts that someone else can take and make for their own.
Yeah, well,
if nothing else, we are fecund for
we're
ideas.
Just passing ideas down along the line to the next person who can pick it up. And seriously, like...
apparently the Night of Rage thing took off, because that's now a movie.
That's the thing.
I don't know if it's actually connected back to us, but, I'm calling an assist unless it can be proven otherwise. We assisted.
But yeah, I want to say, encourage everyone to, this podcasting thing that we're doing is not just for... the big podcast people. It's also for little people like me and Ryan, and for people like you to give it a shot. So back to talking about Watchmen, I think.
Okay, so for the non-linear storytelling, I found that to be an interesting way to how Dr. Manhattan views reality, because they kept mentioning he can see his future, he can see his past.
Yeah.
For him, it's all happening at once.
Yeah, that's true.
With exceptions when you do weird stuff with tachyons.
Yeah.
So it's all there for him.
Yeah.
And so the less than linear storytelling that they had, the amount of flashbacks, helped you to see how Dr. Manhattan sees.
I didn't think of that either at the time. But yes,
I didn't get it until I was going my third time through, because I just occasionally toss it on in the background, because it's got some nice scenes I like to hear. Billy Crudup is Dr. Manhattan. He's got a very nice voice, and I just like hearing him speak.
Oh, well, I thought he had an annoying voice, but...
Well, just to have all that power and then just to have almost infinite calmness and quietness about it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting difference than what you see for, I have the power, I have the booming voice, you will follow my lead. No, he's a scientist. He speaks very quietly, very reserved.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's quiet because he's known this. He's already said this. He'll say it again. It's all happening at the same time for him. He knows. He knows. He knows.
Yeah, I don't know if I get it entirely, because I don't think that's a quality. I don't think his personality is a quality of his power. I think he has.
It's in spite of it. It's the sheer degree of control he has over himself.
Well, I don't know if it's. Maybe it might be control.
That's how he was able to build himself back up after being blown to smithereens by the intrinsic field generator.
Okay, yeah, because his
knowledge from how to build a clock. You got to put everything back together in the right order, and then that's how he started doing it. First, he puts the circulatory system and the skeletal system back together. Then he's putting his muscles back on, and then bam, he appears fully manifested. Except for hair. Apparently he wasn't big on hair. Whatever. I'm not willing to call judgment.
Or clothes, for that matter.
Well, see, the thing is, in the book, you were able actually to see what point in time it is by how few clothes he has.
So does he take off clothes as he goes?
As he detaches himself from humanity, he wears less and less clothes because he has less humility and less, embarrassment over being nearly naked.
Yeah.
So while they tend to show him either naked and, thankfully at a right angle where all you're seeing is Blue Bomb and not the lower Manhattan meat district, it's in the book. He starts off, full suit, and then later on he's shown, just wearing pants, no shirt. Later on he's just in the Speedos and then eventually naked.
Okay.
So it's an interesting symbolism in that case as to his detachment from humanity, because he's not even following their social graces anymore. He's got blue wang for anyone who cares to look at him from the right angle.
Right. And in the movie it's sort of off and on because he puts on a tuxedo to go to like an interview.
I think that's because the government people told him put on an interview outfit. You're not doing it naked. Thank you.
For some reason he listened to them, so he must...
I think that's because they were helping provide him with the resources for his experiments.
Did he really? This is what I don't understand about Dr. Manhattan, though.
It's easier for him just to have them get it for him and him follow a small couple things than for him to make everything from scratch and out of the, changing oxygen into whatever he needed.
He does that on Mars, though. He creates his own,
or condenses
thing.
it all together. Yeah, he creates his wonderful Manhattan getaway.
Although, that thing that he made on Mars, it didn't seem to have any actual function. It was just maybe like a pretty sculpture.
It was kind of a sculpture, kind of his home. Very much reminiscent of a watch.
Yeah, I guess.
That was, I think, oblique symbolism as to how his mind operates.
Yeah, he was thinking about watches a lot.
Well, he grew up on that, so he grew up on it happens. The miracle, it wasn't a miracle. The only thing that can happen is what does happen. He was a very deterministic person, which fits with the mold of a watch.
Okay.
Although why he decided to build it out of really, really weak glass. Maybe he does have an artistic side that he just doesn't acknowledge or let out very often.
All right.
So, there's depths of character in there. So now for the big spoiler. Perhaps even for you. That's not how the book ended. It wasn't a nuclear blast. Throughout the book, and I'll end it to you if you want, there's actual bits that tell a story that's going on in the background. There's a conspiracy going on. The pyramid transnational symbol, the new world delivery system, it's a reference to the Illuminati and conspiracies.
Yeah.
There's a huge conspiracy going on in the background, and exactly what's going on. If you read the book and look at the hints, read the stuff, read between the lines, you start understanding. You could see what was happening, and not necessarily everything, but you can definitely see what happened to this missing person, what's going on there, what's happening with this, and you can start seeing the patterns before. You can be the investigator. Even Rorschach wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Storytelling. Good. So how did it end?
Giant octopus psychic beast killing a quarter of New York with a psychic death blast.
Okay, that's pretty much similar to a nuclear blast.
Yeah, and it scares the entire world into believing that slightly off of our reality are these horrible tentacled psychic beasts that will kill a lot of people, if they ever break through. So they're breaking through. We gotta, all work together here to make sure they don't invade.
So they didn't pretend that it was Dr. Manhattan?
No.
Okay.
So it's a little different. I can definitely see why they chose to go with the Dr. Manhattan, we'll fake blast it, because to show all the stuff that led up to this, and for you to see, when you're like, oh, okay, that's what's happening, and that's, how the whole thing goes, for the, all the background details that they're just thrown out there. If you pick it up, you pick it up. If you don't, it's a surprise. Mm-hmm. That would have taken 3 movies. It would have taken a trilogy to have done, right, with all the background stuff. Everything would have had to have been so perfect. It would have had to have rivaled Dr. Manhattan's Mars machine.
Well, I was satisfied with the movie as one movie. I don't feel like I totally understood everything, but I was satisfied that, it had a beginning, middle, and end, basically, and I sort of... understand what happened. So yeah.
Well, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's good. I can see why Alan Moore was unhappy with it.
Okay.
He's unhappy with any of his stuff being transferred over to a different media format.
Yeah, and that's his right.
Yeah. I would like him to eventually understand that, there are differences between media formats, so you can't directly copy. It's unfeasible and just doesn't always work. The nudity, I think, is a great example of that.
Uh-huh.
In the comics, a bare bum is just like two curved lines. The genitals are just like a little doodle scribble.
Yeah.
But when they're done in a real, live action thing, there's more to it than just a couple lines. There's some coloration effects, there's shading, there's depth added to it. It's like, I don't need to see depth added on that right now, thank you.
Well, they did it, so...
There's some other themes that work there with nudity and costumes. Which is why he could have told the story without any costume people happening at all. There are no superheroes as a thing that exists. But the costumes were actually a level of symbolism, too. It's actually quite deep. It's not something I think you can dig out on anyone reading or watching. It's something you have to mull over throughout the course of years to properly get.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be revisiting the Watchmen in depth in the next years.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe 1 year from now I'll lend you the book and then you can read it. And then maybe you can see it from a different perspective and say, now the scene in the movie made more sense.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if I'm not reading anything else at the time, yeah. Because I think it'd be worth it to at least, know what the book is.
Alan Moore's stuff is always worth reading, at least once.
Yeah.
But my goodness, Rorschach was an interesting character, I found.
Yeah.
In real life, he is not a person I would like to associate with, either, through geographic proximity or through, any level of conversation. He was homophobic. He had a horrible, old-style American fear of communism. He quite hated liberalism. Mind you, in the setting, there was something about, either, vote for Nixon or you vote for the commies. So clearly the Republicans had the stranglehold on the vote for us or you're doing your country a disservice sort of thing. But Rorschach really cranked that up to 11. He hated the liberals, he hated the media, he hated the general people, and he was smelly, he was dirty, he was violent, he was sociopathic, psychopathic, just a horrible person. But he held true to his beliefs. And I think that's why a lot of people like him.
I mean, there are aspects of him that are sympathetic, which is good because, like I started out the movie as like, who's this jerk? I don't like him. And then, because he starts, the very first things he says in the movie, like almost his first line is like, those filthy fornicators and stuff.
They'll be drowning in the streets and they'll cry up to me, help us, and I'll whisper, no.
Yeah, something like that. And...
Talking about bloated dog carcasses exploding in the alleyways. Yeah, he's not exactly a clean mentality sort of fellow.
I don't like this guy. But by the end of the movie, it's like, okay,
Okay, he had a real hard life.
Yeah.
He's seen some rather nasty things. What I actually liked in the book was his speech patterns. If you watch the speech patterns of him, before he encounters the incident that traumatized him, that killed off Kovacs and left only Rorschach behind, as he says, he talks differently. It's a completely different style. Afterwards, like when they were going to Karnak, and he says, "Don't wish to interrupt the flight, but avoid crash. May need to pull up soon." He talks very cut and dry. He cuts out words from his sentences to make it very clear-cut as to what he says. There is no ifs or buts. There's no gray in his world. It's all white or black, like his mask. But beforehand, when he was the Watchmen scene, when it'd be where Dr. Manhattan first meets the Silk Spectre. When they're talking together there, in the book, he says, we've made some good, work fighting the mob. I think this. He speaks like a regular person. He doesn't believe things. It's not certain. He says, I think. Not, this is true. This is this. I think. And he speaks like a regular person, not like he's narrating a journal. And so,
wow.
Well, that's something that really doesn't happen because he doesn't speak much in that scene. But in the book, it picks up.
Okay.
He becomes a very different character between this two, and that horrible traumatic event is what separates it. After he sees that, he gains this new understanding, we'll say, of what life in reality is like, and he becomes a completely different person. Walter Kovacs dies that night.
Yeah.
Which I think is very interesting concepts that he plays around with. Especially given, well, the Rorschach is an ink blot test. What are the ink blots supposed to represent? Nothing. There is no meaning in it. It's just a random ink blot. What you see in it is what you assign to yourself, and that's how they use that. What do you see in this? And the person will see things that is reflected within them. It's almost like a mirror for the mind.
Yeah.
For the
psyche.
psyche.
That's what a Rorschach test is.
And so that's what they use it as, and that's who he is. Whether he's a good person who sticks to his core values, even despite the lack of popularity, and when all of society is going the other way, or whether he's a horrible, nasty person that's completely irredeemable, or whether he's somewhere in the middle, that's reflected by you, what you see, and your outlook on reality. So I think he's a very interesting character for someone who has no more power than really good martial arts skills and a desperate will to survive and hurt people.
Yeah, well, this was definitely a comic book movie in that the characters, they jump through windows and don't get hurt, and they jump off like second floor buildings and don't get hurt.
I like to imagine for a lot of things they've managed to invent the shock-absorbing footwear so that when you jump off of a building and land on your feet, that's why your ankles didn't shatter. It just got absorbed, and I don't know, I guess your boots are warm now, but whatever.
Well, and that's another thing about this show in particular. They have certain bits of technology they don't entirely explain, which is different from other superhero movies or maybe James Bond or something like that. James Bond goes to very specific
lengths to prove itself.
Well, because at the beginning of the show, it's like Q is like, these are all the gadgets you're going to be using throughout this movie. It's like, lays them out on the table, and Bond, he plays with them and he breaks them.
Which is fun in some senses to think, keep those in mind as you're watching the movie. And then it's like, okay, which one will Bond whip out and how will he use it now?
Yeah, but in this movie, it's like, oh no, I just happen to have bulletproof gloves. Like, what? It's like...
in that case, he didn't necessarily have the bulletproof glove so much as he caught it at the right angle, and he was still bleeding on there. But, yeah, he was quick enough to catch or deflect the bullet within the span of human reason, I
think that would be a bulletproof glove, because even if he caught, like, the bullet hit his hand, it would go through his hand, basically, if it wasn't a bulletproof glove. And I think bulletproof gloves are... It
worked a little bit differently in the book, and this is just the closest they were able to approximate for him catching a bullet.
Okay.
Veidt was an interesting guy, because Adrian was supposed to be the best human can be. You cannot top him physically, you cannot top him mentally. And so at what point do you transcend that and become superhuman? He's able to catch and stop a bullet. In the book, they even reference that, like with the attempted assassin who's firing at him. What if he'd been able to actually aim the gun at you and fire it at you? He mentions, I guess I have to catch the bullet then. And everyone goes, oh, you're being facetious, ah ha ha, that's very funny. You were very seriously in danger there. And when it's, no, he's actually good enough to catch or stop, deflect a bullet. So it's like, whoa, mind-blowing scene in the book.
Right.
Mind you, there's a lot of mind-blowing scenes in that part of the book. So, it's not like you're missing out for just that one bit. But he was a very interesting one in that he was the opposite of Rorschach.
Okay.
He was liberal. He was homosexual. I'm not sure if you noticed. It showed up very quickly there. He had a file marked boys. When they got into his computer there was a file marked boys.
Okay. And
it was implied in some other areas that yes, he was that way. So he was very much the opposite of Rorschach. his morals were not absolutes, they were all relatives. He was willing to do things that would be conceived as bad because it would be good from this other perspective. So he was a moral relativist as opposed to a moral absolutist.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I can see that.
And so I found the fact that they had almost no interaction until the very end an interesting counterpoint with each other, too. Is because you could only imagine how antagonistic they would have been to each other if you'd put them in okay, second scene of the movie, let's put the two opposites together, and then there would have been a fight within about 5 minutes.
Yeah, there would have been. I wonder if that might have saved us the trouble of the movie too, because whenever those characters do meet, any of the old the team members, whenever they meet, they often end up solving some sort of problem. Even when they seem to be at odds before they meet, it's like they meet, they might even fight a little bit, and then they're like, oh, okay, we figured out where we are, and we solved this one little aspect of the problem. And
another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And that brings in one of the key points of the movie and even the title, The Watchmen. The reason they're able to solve and do better when they're with each other is because they're watching each other's backs.
Sure.
The problem that happens with Rorschach, why his mind was shattered, he was operating alone that night. Why John is Dr. Manhattan is removing himself from humanity, he's isolating himself into his work.
Yeah.
There's no one there to watch the Watchmen.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess they're supposed to watch each other. And they mention a few times that all of them are lonely and they don't have much connection. Not
Silk
just
Spectre comes out and even says it, the one line, the only people I know are superheroes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it becomes a thing to maintain your stability, mental sanity, and otherwise be the best you can be, you can't isolate yourself from the rest of your fellow man. You have to become one with them.
Yeah, well, I think that's true.
Mind you, it's not always easy. Adrian Veidt himself said he's always felt alone. Being the smartest man in the world, he's never found anybody he can really relate to. And that may be one of the causes for why he decided to go so far to make the world a better place. There was no one there he could relate to help say, dude, that idea's a little nuts. Step back. Let's find another idea. We'll put this as plan B and find plan A and see if we can come up with something better. There was no one there to do that for him.
Yeah, because all the captains of industry that he met with, he's like, I could buy and sell all of you kind of deal.
That, and they were as corrupt as their real life counterparts would eventually prove to be.
Yeah.
So, but that actually does remind me of another thing. The inclusion of the songs, the real world songs, and the real world celebrities and otherwise noteworthy figures, I think that works as like a pass for the unrealistic stuff, like people jumping 2 stories, or the Silk Spectre having long hair that doesn't get tangled up in any motion she does. She outruns fire and nothing's burned or scorched.
Yeah.
Why does that get a pass? Because it's already bought validity by having these real-world figures integrated in. So if it was just a superhero thing, without any big-name real-world name drops, you'd say, oh, that's so unrealistic. They were jumping. They were completely ignoring physics. It just completely broke my suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
But in the movie, the songs, the places, the people, all from the real world got brought in, and they get used to create this simulation of reality. And so when you see them then do something unrealistic, you are willing to give it a pass because they've already bought their credibility with these real-world names and places.
Well, I might say that it's the opposite, though, because when I was watching it, every time they introduced a real-world event, it's like, oh, here's Vietnam again. I'm like, oh, well, that didn't really happen because the Americans didn't win Vietnam.
Not within a week, because they didn't have a giant blue guy who could blow people up with his mind.
So in that sense, I see those moments of referring to history as moments of basically the movie winking at you and saying, yeah, this is a story that we're telling about your world, but it's our world. And
imagine how awesome it would have been if we had this happening, eh? 51 states and giant blue people blowing things up.
Wow. It's a big exercise in what if, and it's every time they throw something in there, it's like, yes, this is this is our story, and aren't you having fun watching it? And my answer obviously is yes. It's like, this is great.
Maybe then it can work the other way, is by having these real world people in the unrealistic situation, like Nixon having 5 terms in office, if you count the date properly.
Okay.
He's on his 5th term. There's 51 states. These unrealistic bits, and then somebody jumps 2 stories and doesn't shatter their kneecaps and shins because they didn't roll when they landed. You're going to argue that for the unrealistic part? 5-term Nixon is there, and you're going to argue about, he didn't tuck and roll? No, mind you, there was a few parts where they did work properly when they were jumping. I recall Silk Spectre doing a tuck and roll when she landed once.
Okay.
And when Night Owl jumped out of Archie, he had his cape open, and he was clearly buffering himself on his way down.
Okay.
So those ones, I'm willing to give those a complete and utter pass. There was a tuck and roll, and there was one seeming like he was slowing his descent. So, okay.
Well, yeah. And ultimately, all of those superhero-y things like Rorschach fighting off a whole SWAT team and nobody getting a shot off at him.
Hey, if there was the shots on him, no one hit him, though.
Yeah, no one hit him. That stuff you just gotta say, it's a comic book movie, so whatever.
Well, in that case, it was used to highlight Rorschach's, he's not actual superpower, but his forte, which is distraction, close quarters fighting, improvised fighting, and dirty fighting.
Yeah, and they have to fudge things a little bit with they're pointing their guns basically point blank at him, and no one shoots him, but that like I'm saying, that's fine. That's
keep in mind, though, don't forget, he was in a target-rich environment. They were in a target-poor environment. They had one target to hit, which was him. He could basically spray his little homemade flamethrower anywhere and hit a SWAT guy.
Yeah, but if he missed any one of those SWAT guys, then they would be able to shoot him because they wouldn't be distracted.
But that's the thing, is he's good at distractions. That's why he opens the door at the right time so that when the guy goes to smack it down, he's off his balance. All of a sudden they're like, whoa, careful. This guy's out of his balance. We got to reevaluate the situation. He comes in, starts throwing fire at people like it's going out of sale.
The thing is, these guys are professionals. They're expecting the unexpected behind the door. They're trained for this.
They're expecting a nut in a mask.
I don't know. How many guys are there? There's like 10 guys in the stairwell there?
I think I know he took down 3 on the one way. There was the guy on the other side. He gets 4. And then he gets the gas gun to hit a 5th guy. And then the 6th guy is shooting at him as he dives out the window.
I guess, okay, here, I'll
but he does knock a couple more as he when he knocks the one guy down the staircase. But that's because it was a tight staircase. You got to give me that.
Here's what I'll give you. Here's what my theory on why Rorschach was able to fight off 10 SWAT guys in a hallway is because government cutbacks. They don't do training anymore because the Republicans don't like to pay for, they don't pay for the local SWAT team. They might pay for some expensive defense projects. Even that, I don't know.
That actually would be a very interesting way to help show the decrepitude of society that they like to show throughout the movie, how bad things are.
Yeah.
It's like, man, they don't even pay the SWAT team to become proficient. They're basically just a bunch of guys in decent armor.
Yeah, so there.
Okay.
So that'll do it for me.
I'm also willing to point out, it was a really narrow stairway. I have no idea how anybody got furniture up into that place.
With great difficulty, or small furniture.
I don't know, maybe there was a lift thing out in the back somewhere. Maybe there was really decent-sized windows somewhere you could bring it up.
I'm doubting both of those. Maybe a medium-sized window, but probably it'd be very...
On the other hand, I gotta say, it didn't look like there was much furniture in
that's the thing.
Walter
the apartments
Jacoby's.
are so small.
You can't afford a big chair. Get yourself some folding chairs. It'll be easier to bring it up the staircase.
Yeah, exactly.
So...
Yeah. We've been talking for just over 90 minutes, so we should probably wrap it up fairly soon. Just want to remind the listeners we have an email address, thesimulationist@gmail.com.
If there was something you think was so very important that completely ruined the movie because it wasn't in the, they didn't copy it from the book, tell us, man. This is a book that is like 7-layer, like, bean dip paste, man. There is just so much to dissect. There's a good chance I've missed a lot. I'm not the deepest guy. I try to study. I try to find the layers on this stuff. But this is a deep work, man.
I didn't try. I watched it once. I enjoyed it. I saw some cool things that I saw in the moment, and by now I've already forgotten. But I did enjoy it.
Well, trust me. In the book, there's some nice symbolism for the smiley face.
Yeah.
With the blood on it. It's also the symbolic stuff as to how they do it with the 4 minutes to midnight on the nuclear clock. How time keeps happening at just a few seconds to midnight. That small timepiece, a circle with those lines of that, it keeps showing up. And you even wind up seeing the smiley face in the book as their power source for when everyone's using electrical power on their vehicles. That's what the outlets look like. It's effectively a smiley face when you plug it in.
Okay, yeah.
And that was something Alan Moore didn't actually notice until his 5th time round, and he phones up, was it Gibbons, the writer, and he goes, "Did you do that on purpose?" And he goes, "Yeah." "You've just noticed?" He goes, "Yeah, that was brilliant. Awesome."
The smiley face on the plugs. Oh.
Just, smiley face, little things in the background here and there that keep repeating patterns. Which is, again, something you have to ask yourself, was that on purpose, or am I just seeing that? It's a Rorschach test sometimes.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, yeah.
Yes.
I suppose we could go on, but...
and people have. I'm sure there's somewhere out there's like a 5-hour, podcast someone did on this.
But, yeah, we'll have to wrap it up with that. Do you have any final thoughts?
I'll give it 2 stars out of 2. Because I'm not one for like 7, 8 stars sort of things. I'm giving it 2 out of 2 stars.
Oh, I like your 2 stars. Is it possible for a film to get 0 stars?
Yes, but that would have to have been a rather bad film.
Okay, so 2 out of 2.
I do rank them out into half stars for partial credits. When they're trying something but failed, I'll give for that.
And I give it 3.1415 out of... no, wait. I give it a 2 out of 3. No, I give it a 3 out of 3.1415. 9.
But yes, I do recommend everybody sees it. Perhaps before you read the book, perhaps after. It depends on your style, whether or not you want to say, "Oh, the book was better, this movie's disappointing," or to read the book afterwards and go, "Oh, okay, okay, the added depth here, okay, this makes sense here and there, and okay, I'm getting extra stuff out of this."
Wait, I just thought of something.
Oh.
I give it a 6 out of tau radians.
Okay.
Tau radians, because if tau is a circle, and I'm drawing a circle right now for Ryan, but the rest of you can't see it. The tau goes all the way around. Tau radians goes to, well, for you, it was
just under, so it would be the same as the 4 minutes to midnight.
Oh, I'm so clever.
That's a good way to end it. All right.
I've been Josh Levin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Send us money.